Hello there, my good friends. Grab a blanket, get comfortable, and imagine sitting by a campfire or under a warm lamp on a rainy night. Tonight, we're diving into stories that take us straight back to childhood. Those little moments that remind us of simpler times, silly traditions, and memories that still make us smile. These aren't big dramatic events. They're the small things, the ones that stick in your heart because of how they made you feel. So let's step back for a while, forget about deadlines and notifications, and lose ourselves in some cozy nostalgia.
I'll never forget the first time my parents let me walk to the corner store by myself. I must have been 9, maybe 10, and in that moment I felt like the most responsible person in the whole neighborhood. My hand was clenched so tightly around this crumpled $5 bill that the ink probably left an imprint on my palm. To anyone else, it was just pocket change. To me, it might as well have been a treasure map. The mission sounded simple: buy a pack of gum and a soda. But inside my head, it was much bigger than that. It was my first real test. Could I handle the world outside my own block without my parents right there to guide me? I remember stepping off the driveway and suddenly noticing things I'd walked past 100 times before. The neighbor's dog barking behind the fence felt louder. The street seemed wider. Even the sidewalk cracks felt like obstacles I needed to carefully step over. Like if I tripped, the whole mission would be ruined. When I got to the intersection, oh man, I must have looked both ways about 10 times. Left, right, left again. Wait, was that car slowing down or not? I even let 2 cars go when I easily could have crossed, just in case. My heart was pounding like I was in the middle of the climax of a Hollywood action blockbuster. And then I finally made it to the store. The little bell above the door jingled when I pushed it open, and I swear it didn't just sound like a doorbell. It sounded like an audience cheering me on. The place smelled faintly of candy and old newspapers, and suddenly I was faced with a decision. Do I stick to the plan gum and soda, or do I explore the endless possibilities? Candy bars, chips, those little toy capsules in the vending machine by the door. I paced the aisles like I was doing serious financial planning. Finally, I grabbed the gum, the soda, and feeling extra bold, a small bag of chips. Walking up to the cashier, I tried to act cool, but when I handed over the crumpled bill, I realized my hands were shaking. Counting change suddenly felt like advanced math. For a second, I panicked. What if I didn't have enough? What if I messed up? But the cashier smiled, dropped a few coins into my palm, and said, "Good job." That little sentence made me feel 10 feet tall. On the walk home, I strutted like I just pulled off the heist of the century. The soda bottle clinking in the bag felt like a medal. When I finally walked back in the door, my mom smiled at me and said, "See? I knew you could do it." And just like that, I realized it wasn't about the gum or the soda, it was about independence. That tiny walk to the corner store was my first taste of freedom. Looking back now, it's funny. These days, I can drive across town, pay bills, file taxes, all the boring adult stuff. But nothing has ever made me feel quite as grown up as that one trip to the corner store when I was 9 years old.
Who remembers sleepovers as a kid? Honestly, I think they were one of the best parts of childhood. The whole thing felt like an adventure before it even started. I'd pack my backpack like I was going away for a week instead of just one night. Pajamas, a pillow, an extra t-shirt, maybe even my favorite stuffed animal, just in case I got homesick at 2 a.m. Half the time, I'd also sneak in snacks I wasn't supposed to bring, like candy bars or chips, because in my mind, a sleepover wasn't official unless there was junk food involved. The anticipation started building hours before I even left the house. I'd be staring at the clock, waiting for my friends' parents to pick me up, and every minute felt like an hour. And when I finally got there, the energy was electric. We'd dump my backpack on the floor and immediately start planning the night like we were CEOs of fun. The highlight, though, was always the blanket fort. Forget tents or sleeping bags, we were architects. We'd drag every single chair in the house into the living room. stretch sheets across them, and pile up cushions until we had this giant fortress that covered half the room. Inside, it felt like our own little world, lit by the soft glow of a flashlight or maybe the TV flickering in the background. To us, it wasn't just a fort. It was a castle, a spaceship, a secret headquarters where only we belonged. Of course, the night didn't stop there. We'd play video games until our eyes hurt, trading controllers back and forth and yelling at each other over who cheated. Then we'd put on scary movies we weren't supposed to watch, the kind that left you jumping at every creak in the house. And when things got too intense, we'd quickly switch to something funny, pretending we weren't actually scared. But the best part, the absolute peak, was when we got slap-happy tired. You know, that point when it's way past bedtime, your brain is half asleep, and suddenly the dumbest things become the funniest jokes you've ever heard. We'd be lying there in the dark, whispering, trying not to wake our friends' parents, and then one of us would say something completely ridiculous. Next thing you know, we're both laughing so hard we can't breathe. Of course, that's always when his mom would open the door and say, "Boys, it's 2 a.m, go to sleep." We'd nod, promise to be quiet, and then 5 minutes later, we'd be cracking up all over again. Looking back now, I realize it wasn't really about the games or the movies or even the blanket fort. It was about that feeling of belonging, of having a best friend who made the world feel bigger and safer at the same time. Those nights felt endless, like time didn't exist. And honestly, if I could bottle that feeling, the laughter, the silliness, the pure joy of being young and carefree, I would. Because the truth is, you don't get that kind of magic as much when you're older. Schedules, responsibilities, work, all of it gets in the way. But every once in a while, when I see a pile of blankets or hear kids laughing late at night, I'm right back in that fort. And for a moment, I feel like a kid again.
Every family has that one tradition that might seem small or even silly to outsiders, but to you, it's priceless. For us, it was Saturday morning pancakes. And not just any pancakes ... Our dad's pancakes. Saturday mornings in our house had a rhythm. No alarms, no rushing out the door. Just the smell of butter melting in a pan drifting through the house like an alarm clock of its own. I'd wake up to the faint sound of my dad whistling some tune he probably made up, mixing batter in that big old bowl with the wooden spoon that had seen better days. We'd all shuffle into the kitchen in our pajamas, bedhead, yawns, and all. The counters would already be a mess. Flour dusted like snow, eggshells scattered, and a stack of plates waiting for their turn. And then came the show. My dad had this habit of flipping the pancakes way too high on purpose, like he was auditioning for a cooking circus. Most of the time they landed safely back in the pan, but sometimes, let's just say a few pancakes met the ceiling. Or the floor. My mom would roll her eyes and pretend to be annoyed, but we'd be doubled over laughing. And even if one hit the floor, he'd joke that it was just a pancake sacrifice to the breakfast gods. The toppings were a whole event too. He'd lay out syrup, peanut butter, slices of banana, chocolate chips, even whipped cream if he was feeling fancy. My siblings and I would try to outdo each other with the most ridiculous pancake creations, like a chocolate chip banana whipped cream mountain that could barely stand up on its own. Of course, half the fun was eating way too much and ending up in a sugar coma by noon. But here's the thing. It wasn't really about the pancakes. It was about what those mornings meant. There was no school, no rushing, no stress. Just all of us together in one room, laughing, sharing stories, and slowing down long enough to just be. Now that I'm older, I see how rare that was. Life moves so fast, and it's easy to forget how powerful those little rituals can be. My dad wasn't just making breakfast. He was making memories. He was teaching us that family isn't built on big vacations or expensive gifts. It's built on small, consistent moments of love. Even today, whenever I smell butter sizzling in a pan or hear the sound of a spatula hitting a skillet, I'm right back in that messy kitchen with pancakes flying through the air and my family laughing around the table. And honestly, that tradition shaped the way I think about love. To me, love is shown in those little rituals, those tiny acts that make you feel safe, cared for, and at home.
When I was cleaning out my old closet a few years ago, I stumbled across something I hadn't seen in decades, my childhood teddy bear. Now, to anyone else, it probably looked like a beat-up old toy ready for the donation bin. Its fur was matted and patchy, one button eye was barely hanging on, and the stitching along the side was loose like it had survived a dozen surgeries. But the second I picked it up, it was like a wave of memories just hit me all at once. That bear wasn't just a toy. It was my sidekick. I dragged it everywhere with me as a kid. Family trips? It came along, stuffed into my backpack with its head poking out like it wanted to see the view. Thunderstorms? It was clutched under the blanket with me while I tried to ignore the lightning. First day of school, I had it hidden in my cubby just so I'd have backup if things felt too scary. I even remember giving it imaginary superpowers like it could protect me from monsters under the bed. And honestly, when you're 6 years old, that kind of protection means everything. Over the years, the bear got patched up more times than I can count. My mom would sew its arms back on when the stuffing started peeking out, and once my grandma even knit a tiny sweater for it because she said, if it's going everywhere with you, at least it should look decent. To me, that bear wasn't just fabric and stuffing, it was proof that no matter what was happening in my little kid world, I wasn't alone. Finding it again as an adult was like finding a time capsule. Suddenly, I was back in my childhood bedroom. Wallpaper covered with stickers I wasn't supposed to put up, lying on the floor with cartoons playing in the background, holding that bear like it was the most important thing I owned. And in that moment, I realized something. Nostalgia isn't really about the object itself. It's about the feeling it gave you. That bear represented comfort, safety, the idea that no matter how big or scary the world seemed, there was always something soft to hold on to. And even now as an adult with bills, deadlines, and responsibilities, holding that old bear reminded me that those feelings never fully leave us. So yeah, to someone else it's just a worn-out toy, but to me, it's a reminder that sometimes the simplest things carry the biggest pieces of our hearts. And honestly, that's what nostalgia is all about. Rediscovering those little anchors that remind us of who we were and how far we've come.
These stories might sound small: a trip to the store, a sleepover, a plate of pancakes, an old teddy bear. But that's the thing, the little moments. They're the ones that shape us. They remind us who we are, where we came from, and what really matters. So maybe tonight, after this video, you'll think about your own nostalgic moments. Maybe it's the smell of your grandmother's cooking, or the sound of an old game console booting up, or maybe it's a song that always played in the car when you were a kid. Whatever it is, hold on to it. Because in a world that moves too fast, those memories are like anchors, grounding us, reminding us that joy doesn't always come from the big, dramatic moments, but from the small, cozy ones that sneak into our hearts and never leave. Thanks for spending this time with us tonight. Until next time, take a breath, slow down, and remember the things that make you feel at home.